Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jennifer. I would like to share an idea with you today, or a few ideas around how to stay balanced and self care in times of crisis or overwhelm. And this can be in our personal lives, health crises, or difficulties in our relationships, or processing our past traumas, dealing with our anxiety, depression, and also specifically, how do we balance when we are concerned about external things, such as things going on in our world? And how do we know that we're balancing that? And so I'm going to throw in some new ideas and refer to some of my old ideas. But one analogy that I love so much and has come in my own mind in a visualization as I'm doing meditation is the eye of a storm. And I imagine sometimes as I'm sitting in meditation, it's almost like I feel a pillar of calm, and you can imagine stuff swirling around you, but you are the eye of the storm. I heard a speech at a monastery I was visiting, and this nun was talking about how mindfulness is one of the most powerful tools when we are facing difficulties or challenges or stepping into some new times. Actually, her speech was about AI, but I think she talks about a hurricane, and in hurricanes, if the eye is very, very small, they call it a pinhole eye, and those hurricanes are more dangerous. But in the analogy of our lives or facing storms, we actually have the power to widen the eye. As we widen that eye, and you just imagine having more and more of a foundation of grounding, of slowing down, observing that we can brace and face these storms of our lives clearer, calmer. So let's talk about the tools that can increase the size of the eye of the storm. One of them is mindfulness, like I just said. And the simple practice of breathing, mindfulness of breath meditation, and breathing in, breathing out, taking a few minutes a day to slow down and observe yourself, observe your breathing. I know it sounds so simple, and it's hard to believe that it's as powerful as it is, but just that simple practice will increase those neural pathways. And if you do it regularly, you will start finding yourself in moments that you have this different wherewithal, like this different level of presence. And you can notice, and it's so important in times of maybe we'd be reactive, that we pause and we might make different decisions, be less reactive, or even just breathe through difficult emotions or difficult moments. So mindfulness is being present and observing what's going on. And you can even imagine it as an eye of a storm, that there is this calm center that grounds you as the difficulties swirl around you. The other thing that I think is really important is understanding how our nervous systems work. We were wired, and our bodies work to address danger that's in the here and now. So it shows up, we have an activated response, and we're meant to take some sort of action in the moment. And because of television and now the internet, we are getting feeds of information at distant places, and our nervous system can obviously get activated by things that are distressing and upset us. And it's a good thing to be aware of what's going on in the world. And I'm just going to talk about how we could balance that, because now it's more and more constant. And now we can have, everyone has phones and cameras, and we can be watching live streams of war or traumatic things going on. And again, being informed is an important thing. what we want to watch for is in each person's own individual nervous system of what your limit is, of where it's too much and you're too overwhelmed, because the body wants to take action when it's witnessing distress like that. And we can care and be concerned, informed, and take action in areas that we can to help. And it is important to know about things going on outside of us, but we want to make sure that our nervous system isn't going into freeze mode. And often it is if we're just sitting watching and getting a feed of like news and information, and it is overwhelming us. I've got my little chart. It's not mine, but the chart that I use. And let's just remember that we want to be, calm, balanced, present, aware, and the most important word here is safe. And when we hear distressing information, we're going to go into these activated places, and the body wants to flee or fight. But when we get too overwhelmed, it's going to contribute to us going into freeze mode when we feel powerless. So the second idea is just understanding how the nervous system works and being kind to your body and your nervous system and balancing how much information you take in. This goes right into my third idea let's see, there is a book that I read by Don Miguel Ruiz. He wrote The Four Agreements. You may be familiar with that one. This was many years ago, and I read it a few times, but it's been a bit. Let's see how I remember. But this concept was so important. And it was another book he wrote called The Voice of Knowledge. And I think it was right when at the early days of me becoming a therapist, and it was so helpful. This idea that he says about discerning truth and lies. And one of the concepts is that if we ever get to a point where we feel so overwhelmed, all is hopeless, that we can know for sure that that is a distorted perspective. And I just really liked that. And that is one way that we can measure and watch. Am I losing all hope? Is this too distorted? And for me, that was really important to balance. As a therapist, I hear really difficult things, sometimes all day, every day, as I'm sitting in session and holding space for those things and feeling compassion, and sometimes hearing things that a person hasn't even shared with anyone else. And we need a balance to remember that there is good in the world too, so that we don't get too discouraged and overwhelmed. And remember that as we care for ourselves, we show up more empowered, more, I said in my post on this page, what I wrote, I said, a balanced, calm, regulated self is a force to be reckoned with. And we can come from that place and take action and help where we can and where we feel called and inspired to. We just want to balance it out and remember that 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 when we get overwhelmed, it's too much for our nervous system. Time to step back, time to breathe and rest, and remind yourself of all the good in the world too. The flowers are blooming. You can see my little forsythia, the very first to bloom. I have a few of them. The beauty that is around us, our relationships, and being present in the moment. And I was thinking this morning about a quote that has to do with being present from uh, uh, Mr. Rogers, of course. And I think, Thich Nhat Hanh talked about this too. The greatest gift you can give those you love is your true presence. And then Mr. Rogers said something about the most important thing you can do is be with the person you're with. Be with the person you're with. Really show up, really be present. So much about mindfulness is about touching beauty. So we practice being in the moment and the joy at having our breath, having the sunshine, the flowers, the trees, and all these beautiful, amazing things that are going on in the world. because we get a feed from the news of the negative things, and we need to remember that babies are being born, animals are being saved, people are falling in love. There are good things happening too. So I hope these 3 ideas help a little bit at finding a place to rest inside yourself that grounds in some comfort and truth, and that a balanced you is the one who can step forth and help when you feel called to. Thank you so much for being here. I'll see you next time.